Oops. Well, that's not working. So, welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Sam Menzie, and with Garrett Shielfield today, we'll be going over into five topics, talking about the top storylines of the first half, then going over a little bit of a roundtable discussion of Ronald Acuna Jr.'s injury for the Braves and the effect on it. After that, we'll be going over Jorge Lopez and the entire situation there with the Mets, then going over Luis Gil for the Yankees and the recent run he has been having and how good he's been, and finally going over David Fletcher and the recent news that he's trying to turn into a knuckleballer for the Braves. But before that, I would like to welcome in three special guests for me. We're having Garrison, TJ, and Jeremy, all from the network. Garrison hosts the Hockey and Golf podcast. TJ and Jeremy both host sports podcasts here. So how you doing, guys, today?
How's it going?
Pretty good.
Doing good.
All right. So we're going to be going over, for the first segment, just our personal top storylines of the year so far and just giving our own take on them. So I think let's get straight into it. So I'm going to start off with Garrison here. Garrison, what is your top storyline for the first half of Major League Baseball and why?
Yeah, the first one I think it's got to be the Cleveland Guardians. Everybody looked at the AL Central going into this season as just a trash shoot of a bunch of teams that are going to be around 500 baseball. And they are the team that has absolutely separated themselves from anybody, even with a good Tigers team that is kind of playing above expectations. Also, the Twins being below expectation. So the Cleveland Guardians being, number two in all of the American League, getting production from guys like David Fry coming out of nowhere and absolutely lighting the league by storm. Jose Ramirez is playing, just like him. It's been really good in Cleveland.
I definitely agree. I think the Guardians have been one of the most surprising teams all year. Looking at the team going into the year, I kind of thought they would just be mediocre like they have in the past few years, but They have really shined and their young players have really performed, which has been something that's been very impressive to me. So now going
And to lose Bieber as well at the front of the rotation. I think that, I wasn't really a believer in the Twins, so I sort of I was looking at the divisions, and it's like the favorites never all win the divisions. So
Right.
I thought that the Guardians could have, based off of their pitching and having that ace, be the team to take over the division. But to lose him and to sort of reshape their identity on the fly and to have this type of production, I think has been awesome for them.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. The entire Guardians roster, I mean, the hitting has finally started to come, but really we see how much a good bullpen can matter, right? They probably have the best bullpen in all of baseball. Jose Ramirez is starting to hit again, and I know me personally, and really the entire baseball media was quick to forget how good this Guardians team was just 2 years ago. Last year everything just kind of went down the drain, and I'm guilty of it too. I thought they were going to have a bad season. That was one of the things that I saw. Really, that entire AL Central, like Garrison was saying, the Royals are having a huge season as well, but the Guardians having 38 wins at this point is something that nobody really saw coming.
I completely agree. And going back to the Bieber point, I mean, the Guardians got off to a really good start, and then Bieber got Tommy John. And my thought was, okay, well, that was fun while it lasted. You're not going to survive this well without arguably your best player, your best pitcher. And they have exceeded every expectation wrong. They've been a great team so far this year and have done a really, really good job. So props to them. And so going to TJ now, what is your top storyline of the first half?
So my top storyline has been the excitement surrounding Paul Skeens. There's been sort of, elite level excitement for him. And I think that, not that I'm ready to move on from Jackson Holiday by any means, but to have that situation all sort of come out a little bit flat, and I thought that he was going to be ready coming into the season, but sort of delaying him coming up to the majors, and that, again, just not really living up to expectations. But Skeens, for the most part, has been awesome. And, even in the outings where he has looked a little bit shakier at times, we see that sort of high level velocity and some of the movement as well on some of his off speeds that is just really encouraging to see. One of the most anticipated pitching debuts from a prospect that we've had in a long time. And I have had a lot of fun sort of tuning into it. His starts are now sort of almost appointment viewing in the MLB.
Yeah, for Paul Skeens, when he was at LSU, all we heard was how great his fastball was. He's a starter going 120 pitches, throwing 100 miles an hour until the very end. But the best pitch for him has been his splinker, I think is what they're calling it, is split finger sinker, which is a 96 mile per hour. It has insane horizontal and vertical. Like it's just missing barrels perfectly. It's so impressive what he's been able to do.
Yeah, the whip rate on all of his pitches too. Like you were saying, it's the fastballs, but he's just he has more than just that fastball, and it's really it's exciting to see where he goes from here.
For sure.
He's come in just 4 starts into his season. In 22 innings, he's had 30 strikeouts as a 2.45 ERA, and just he's already come into the league and he's been, like you said, an ace, arguably a top 10 pitcher in the league already. The most anticipated debut since Steven Strasburg back in 2011 or whatever. It's really cool to watch these pitchers, and that's my favorite thing about baseball, watching elite pitching. You always have fun with home runs, but when you have a guy out there that can just shut down an entire game, hold the whole spotlight, it's really fascinating. And we don't see a lot of people like that nowadays, with analytics keeping pitchers down to 70 pitches, not letting him go through the lineup more than twice. I mean, the Pirates haven't let him go too far in. They're trying to keep him healthy and stuff, and I understand that. But it's cool to see a guy with this kind of ace potential come up and start dominating immediately.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with all that. Another thing I think is just dealing with pressure. I mean, this guy, since last year in college, was on an amazing LSU team, was with the 2nd overall pick, Dylan Cruz. A lot of people knew him. It's not like he came out of nowhere, and I think dealing with that pressure of being the 1st overall pick. Also, I think obviously we know about off the field. He deals with a lot of, I'd say, media attention there because of who he's in a relationship with. So I think that overall, dealing with the pressure has been something that's very much impressed me. And really, he's kind of just shut it all out and been an amazing pitcher so far. Not just great, I think really amazing. I mean, he had 6 innings of no-hit baseball in Wrigley Field against the division rival Cubs, who have been very, very good this year. So, yeah, I've been really impressed with that. So, Jeremy, I'll go with you. What is your top storyline of first half so far?
There's a lot of big storylines in the MLB this season, but my biggest one is just a simple question. What is going on with the Astros, right? They've made it to 7 straight ALCS, and now they're below 500 past Memorial Day. What is going on with them? You don't see a lot of concern around baseball because, the Rangers and the Mariners haven't run away with that division, and they're still kind of in it. But this is just not what you expect out of a team that you can call in the middle of a dynasty run. They have a lot of young players still, and their pitchers, that's really been the issue. But they're getting healthier, and I don't know what made this cataclysmic fall off just out of nowhere. You'd think it sort of slow a little bit, but that's my biggest takeaway, the biggest story for me. The Astros, I don't know what's going on with them.
I mean, yeah, I 100%
I don't think I can answer it.
I 100% agree with you. I think one of the big things is the pitching injuries. I think looking at that is the one thing I've really looked towards is what's different about this team. And not just that, I look at Alex Bregman. He's had a pretty horrible start to the year so far as well. So I think there are some things that are kind of looking at the Astros kind of like, I think one thing we've done with the Astros the past few years kind of look at them as some untouchable team, as just, they're always going to be this good. And I think we're kind of seeing them be human all of a sudden. And you look at you look at Kyle Tucker being a free agent soon, Framber Valdez being a free agent soon, Alex Bregman probably going to leave this year. There's a lot of question marks about the Astros' future, and I think are definitely getting magnified because of the bad start they've had this year. So it's definitely going to be interesting to watch them in the future, and definitely going to be interesting to watch them for throughout this year. So I definitely agree with that. That's a huge storyline so far this year.
Yeah, so, their bats have been bad, but their starting rotation has been so horrible. They have 2 different guys in their starting rotation right now with over 6 ERAs on the season. It's been horrible. And their best ERA guy is Justin Verlander at 3.26. You're relying on, how old is he?
He's
38?
45. That's crazy to me too. That he's still the best in a rotation at 45. We were just talking about how Paul Skeens is like a rare ace nowadays, and Verlander is out there still doing his thing at, I don't know how old he turned. He's over 40, and that's insane. 40, yeah.
Yeah,
And he was great yesterday too in his start against Seattle, where he went a pretty good distance in the game, 7 innings, just 1 earned run, but got no run support whatsoever. And that's the thing, you look at, there's a whole bunch of different options. You mentioned the starting pitching. The bullpen can also be pointed to as one of the weaker, bullpen crews in the MLB. And the timely hitting that we're just so used to with the Astros, it just doesn't feel like they've been at that same level this year.
Yeah,
Crazy. I mean, I don't have the underlying numbers in front of me, but the last time I looked at it, which was honestly about 2 weeks ago, so it might not be up to date anymore, but they were getting bad luck with like BABIP numbers, batting average balls in plays. They were getting bad luck. Their underlying numbers were better. So, I mean, I understand why people aren't worried, but it's still shocking to me to look at them and see them below 500 at this point in the season.
Definitely. I 100% agree with that. And it's going to be very interesting to watch them the rest of the year. And if they become sellers at the deadline, I think that would really shake up a lot. I mean, I don't think they will because
you think they'll be sellers?
I don't think so, simply because I think the pride is kind of too high within that organization of we're not going to sell people. I mean, we're the Astros, but I mean, are you really going to let Bregman walk for nothing when you're third in the AL West and you're 5 or 6 games below 500? I mean, I think those are some questions they have to answer, and I think it's going to be interesting to watch. So for my biggest storyline at the first half, for me, it's going to be the pitching injuries. I mean, the pitching injuries this year have been absolutely devastating. The biggest one for me was Yuri Perez of the Marlins. This is a guy I absolutely love being a prospect for these past few years, and seeing him fall to Tommy John is really, really sad. And I mean, you look at him, we talked about Shane Bieber already. I think I saw a stat where the top 10 people of velocity this year, like average fastball velocity, have all gone Tommy John. And it's going to be really interesting to see if velocity is something that is taken into consideration with pitchers in the future, and just like kind of maybe pacing yourself out with that throughout a game. And I just think the pitching injuries are something that has been really devastating this year, and something I'm definitely watching. So I think that's my biggest one, and also Cleveland as well. I would say the way they have been performing. So yeah,
I think we're hitting the upper limit of the human arm with the velocity, and I think that's a big reason. Like we're literally seeing people throw 105 miles an hour. That is a ridiculous number. No one should be able to do that, and I think that's a huge thing with injuries. They obviously got rid of the sticky stuff, the rule, and I think that helped pitchers because they didn't have to be so violent with their arm motions to get those spins. But we're going to start to see it come down a little bit. I think pitchers can't keep this up. It goes back to that no more true starter situation conversation, but we're reaching the absolute limit of the human arm at this point, and I'm really curious to see how far it can actually go.
Yeah, to go on to your point, Jeremy, there is a pitcher, Jordan Hicks, San Francisco Giants starter. Yeah. He was throwing 100+ miles per hour in the bullpen in St. Louis, and he went to San Francisco and they told him to not throw that hard anymore. So now his velocity is like 96 because he was a walking Tommy John potential. So,
and he's become a great starter for San Francisco as well.
And he is really good.
That's been an experiment that has really helped out for them. I was kind of indifferent on that going into the season. I saw that in the offseason. I saw, the Giants signed Jordan Hicks, and then, they signed him to be a starter, which was a really interesting turn of events. But, hey, it's worked out well for them, so props to them. So that is it for the first segment here, talking about our top storylines of the year. We'll be coming back for our second segment, where we'll be talking about Ronald Acuna Jr., and I'd say the devastating injury he had for the Atlanta Braves, and just a little bit of a discussion on the impact that it is going to have on the Braves. So, yeah. We talk about that, and we'll see you after the break. So thanks, and bye.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit, I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant, I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we're back here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast, bringing you our second segment, which is going to be talking about Ronald Acuna Jr. and the injury he had for the Atlanta Braves this year. So just talking about that and the impact it is going to have on the Braves team. So I'll start with TJ this time. TJ, when you saw Ronald Acuna Jr. tear his ACL once again, what was your thoughts and what do you think the impact is going to be on the Braves?
I mean, it's devastating. You know, one of the most electric players in the MLB, and for him to be dealing with this again, obviously, different knee than 2021. It was it 21 or 22 that he tore his last ACL?
20.
But, you know, 21, yeah. So it really hurts to see. Now, there are a whole sort of different ways you can go about this conversation. One thing that sort of stuck out to me is how are the Braves going to, you know, you want to talk about this season, absolutely, but in terms of long term as well with the Braves, how are they going to choose to sort of manage this situation with Acuna, you know, first ever 40 home runs, 70 stolen bases player last year? That is putting a lot of tread in terms of the attempts last year. We don't typically see, you know, the best players in the MLB have these super high numbers in terms of steal attempts. We saw the Angels ask Mike Trout to cut back on his steal attempts when he was sort of coming up and dealing with these injuries as well. So that's sort of something to me in terms of, you know, Acuna on one of the most team-friendly deals considering the level of production that he has, does sort of, it almost feels like the Braves are more willing to sort of let Acuna be Acuna because of that. But I'm curious whether or not they try and scale back some of the physical toll on him in these years to come, knowing that obviously it's not just one, but both of his knees are now going through this type of surgical repair.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, one question I posed when I saw this was, again, what is the long-term effects on his career? Because you've torn your ACL in both your knees now before your second contract. Is that something that is going to really affect him not only for just next year, but for his entire career? I mean, we saw in 2022 coming back from the ACL, even though he did mostly play a full season, he really wasn't the same. I mean, we saw 2023, a full healthy season. He won the MVP, but is he ever really going to have that full healthy season again is something that I'm definitely wondering about going into the future. And I think it is going to be one of the biggest effects in the future now. So going to Jeremy now, what was your thoughts when you heard about the Acuna injury?
Right. Obviously, it's devastating. You never want a guy as exciting as Acuna to go down with injury like that. You know, your knees, he's such an explosive player, defense, offense. You mentioned the base stealing, what he does, just electrifying on the baseball field every single night. So it's heartbreaking. My second thought, obviously, outside of hopefully he gets better, is how is this going to affect the Braves this season? And I honestly did not think about the long term because he was able to come back from that first ACL tear. And maybe that's a little short-minded of me because you never know how a player is going to recover. And this definitely will affect the contract he's going to give because that's going to be an excuse. It's going to be a negotiation tactic used against him. He's not going to get that as big money as he probably deserves. But a guy like Acuna is invaluable. And the Braves need to find a way to replace him. They were able to do it in 2021, getting a platoon of outfielders. They ended up winning a World Series, it's not something that they can count on doing again. And it's just a shame to lose someone aside from just Braves fans, really for the entire MLB at a point when the MLB really needs players like that exciting out to get the product more to get it more to more people that aren't watching baseball.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And coming in the chat here is our co-host, our co-worker Eric Rodriguez, who hosts the wrestling show. He says the pressure now goes on Marcell Ozuna and Chris Sale and the pitching staff. I definitely agree with all that. I think Ozuna is really the one lifting the offense right now. He's done a really fantastic job. I mean, I did not expect this when we saw last year how much he struggled, but he's done a great job. And I agree with Chris Sale and the pitching staff. I think especially Chris Sale because of the Spencer Strider injury. Him and Max Fried are really the ones carrying that rotation right now. So I think the pressure definitely goes on the rest of the team, and definitely watching those guys for the future. So Garrison, now what was your thoughts on the Acuna injury and the effect it's going to have on the Braves?
Yeah, I mean, of course it's devastating, right? I mean, that's just the sentiment that everybody holds about this injury is we're losing another. I mean, he's 26-year-old. That's the definition of the prime for an athlete, and he is truly an athlete. So it sucks, and it sucks for all of Major League Baseball. Just the amount of injuries we're seeing this year. We talked about the pitching injuries, but there's also been a plethora of players that are also injured throughout this year. I mean, Mike Trout's out for the rest of the season as well. I mean, we're missing another year from probably the greatest baseball player we've ever seen with our own eyes. So it's so unfortunate having another year without a superstar. But when you're talking about the Braves, they've done it before without him, and they can definitely do it again. Granted, this is a much more difficult National League than probably 2021 was. I mean, the Los Angeles Dodgers have the most super team we've ever seen. The Milwaukee Brewers are playing amazing. The Philadelphia Phillies are finally being able to hit in, before July. So it sucks for the Braves the year that this is happening, and you could definitely use more Ronald Acuna Jr., but they went out and got Jared Kelenic. They have Adam Duvall, who is a serviceable platoon guy in the outfield. We talked about Marcell Ozuna, who has been a career year again with his bat. He's of course their DH, but he has played outfield most of his life. So, and then Michael Harris is that center fielder that a perfect leadoff guy. So they can replace him. They have pieces. This is an insanely great deep Braves core. So the season's not over because of it for the Braves.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't say it. I wouldn't say it's over by any means. It's interesting. I, on my show earlier this week, sort of went through different options of who they could potentially try and go out and get. Sounds like the Braves are sort of, at least right now, of the mindset of trying to find that internal option and not have to go out and spend. And like you mentioned, Duvall is a very serviceable outfield piece that, I think can be maybe a little bit more. We saw when he was with Boston the way that he was able to be maybe a little bit more of an everyday guy than his resume up to this point in his career has showed. But is going to be interesting whether or not they do try and bring anything else in. We mentioned the injury already that they did overcome in Spencer Strider to some degree, and lucky for them, they were able to have pulled off this Chris Sale deal in the offseason, and they're getting a great resurgence from him. But this is losing, whatever you want to categorize it as, two of your three best players possibly on the roster, and trying to make up for that level of production. And the development of that young pitching core that Strider was a part of was part of what helped them in 21 to win the World Series. So definitely work to be done, but I would not be ready to count them out either.
Mm-hmm. And the Braves are lucky. We talk about their depth. They're one of only two teams in the entire MLB that probably could survive an injury like this, the Dodgers being the other one. You mentioned Ozuna being that big bat. They still have Matt Olson, who hasn't really woken up yet. They have the ability to replace him by committee, because that offense really hasn't woken up yet. The defense is something that can be replaced. I'm just more worried about the morale in the clubhouse. And that's something that isn't talked about too much in the MLB. It's a grueling season. 162 games is not something to just scoff at and be like, oh, that's easy. It's not like a 17 game NFL schedule. And even it's twice as much as the NBA and the NHL. You know, this is not an easy year to get through. And it's one of those things that they need to, winning cures all, but they need to figure out a way to get the energy back up before it like tanks their whole year.
Yep.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And while I want to go back to the point of their season not being over, I definitely agree with that. I don't think their season is over, but I look at the landscape of the NL and I look at, let's say, a playoff game, and you're not, a playoff series. You're not going to have Spencer Strider. You're not going to have Ronald Acuna Jr. There are a lot of good teams in the NL this year. You have, of course, the Dodgers. You have the Phillies, who have done outstanding. Yes, they've played not the greatest of teams, but at the same time, you can only beat who you play, so I don't really hold that against them. After that, I mean, you have some other great teams. You have the Cubs, who have done really well. The Brewers have done really well. Even teams like the Padres, Diamondbacks, Giants, who have a lot of talent. So the NL is stacked this year, and without Acuna, without Strider, who knows what might happen in the future as well with your team, I'm not exactly sure they have fully what they need to, I'd say, maybe go for a run in the NL this year. I'm not going to count them out because they are the Atlanta Braves, but I think it's looking a little more grim than maybe it was at the start of this year or the past few years. So,
yep.
All right. I think that's it for today. So I want to thank you guys so much for coming on the show. Remember to follow all their shows, I guess. Garrison does hockey and golf. TJ and Jeremy both do sports. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for coming on today. And, yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All right. So, there we go. So we're moving into our third segment now, talking about Jorge Lopez and the situation there with the Mets. So, yeah, we'll see you after the break. So thanks and bye.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
We are back here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast, bringing you our second segment. Now, I'm not exactly sure why my face is not being shown here. That's a big problem. So, okay. That's not good. I'm going to exit out. I apologize. I may have to end the stream and then come back. If that is what is going to happen, I'll let you know. But yeah, I think that's what's going to end up happening here. So I'm going to be ending the stream here quickly and coming right back, hopefully, and having my camera on. If it does not work, I think I may have to end the stream early because of technical issues, which I apologize about. So I'm going to